Good morning and welcome to the first session of the Professional Development Quality Outcomes and Best Practices webinar series. My name is Crystal George and I'm with the University of North Texas Workplace Inclusion and Sustainable Employment, also known as UNT-WISE. For all of you joining us using the internet today, please notice the webinar control panel along the right side of your screen. This panel contains a question box. If you have questions or comments during the session for the presenter, please use this question box. For now, I want to make sure everyone can hear me, so please type the word yes in the question box if you can hear me. Great, looks like everyone can hear us. Awesome. If you're calling in by phone only today, please email UNT-WISE at unt.edu to receive credit for your participation. At the end of the session, I'll provide more information about receiving credit for this webinar and more information about the second session. Now I would like to introduce our speaker, Dr. Brandy Livingston. Dr. Livingston is the Senior Lecturer and Undergraduate Coordinator for the University of North Texas Department of Rehabilitation and Health Services. She received her doctoral degree in special education with a concentration of rehabilitation counseling from the University of Texas at Austin, and her master's degree in rehabilitation counseling from Louisiana State University Health Sciences Center. She has also worked as a vocational rehabilitation counselor for the state of Texas. Her interests include psychosocial aspects of disability, cultural competence, students with disabilities in post-secondary education, and employment of persons with disabilities, specifically people with blindness or visual impairments. Brandy, we are glad you're here today, and we are looking forward to this wonderful webinar.
Thank you, Crystal. Good morning, everybody. I just told everyone that I haven't had my coffee yet, so let's hope that I am well awake enough to discuss professional development this morning. So this is part one of a two-part series, as Crystal mentioned. In this session, we will focus on a little bit about professional development and looking at ethics. And then in the second session, we will again pick up looking at ethics and how this can relate to high quality services and outcomes for our clients or customers, along with the impact of professional development. So to get us started, I will talk about the objectives again. So one of our first objective will be to define professional development. And then we will describe some professional development and how it's related to ethical guidelines. And then we're going to identify strategies for best practices and quality outcomes. So a little bit kind of related to what I just discussed in part one and part two. Obviously, professional development is important to each of you who are attending this webinar because this is an example of professional development. So let's get started kind of talking about what professional development is. So essentially, it is a way of getting access to education for staff and a way to kind of improve your capabilities through this education. And sometimes it can be provided, through an outside organization or by watching others in your organization. So someone as a consultant could come in and provide that, kind of like myself, I'm coming in, I'm not necessarily with your organization. Or it can be something that's done in-house where maybe you have a meeting at your organization and a part of that meeting is professional development. And it also, professional development can, build the morale of individuals who work there. Yes, it lets people know we care about your education and we care that you're providing high quality services, but it also attracts people who are interested in providing high quality services because that means that you want to learn. I know that we're at a university, or I'm at a university where I'm delivering this webinar, which means that I'm interested in a learning environment. And, as a person with a doctoral degree, that means that I've been pretty much a lifelong learner. And I continue to be a lifelong learner because just like you, I participate in professional development, either through delivering it in the classroom or through these webinars, but then going to my own professional development activities so that I can be a better instructor. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we move on further. And then again, another definition of professional development, still kind of related, where it's a variety of specialized training. And again, to help improve, professional knowledge and competencies and skills. So either way you look at professional development, depending on who defines it, it basically means some type of specialized training to improve your capabilities as a professional. And I should say that when I was looking up, the definition of professional development, several different definitions came up from different industries. So there were definitions in education, which is where we traditionally hear the term professional development. There were definitions in business. I saw definitions of professional development for rehab counselors. So professional development exists in different avenues in terms of work. It's this need to have specialized training to, again, make sure that you're competent and capable to continue to provide services. And so when we think about professional development, I know when people hear that word, they're like, well, I don't know, what does that mean? Well, it, has these different characteristics. So it could be, in person or online. As in the case of this webinar, we are, online. It's not something that's necessarily in person, but I know I have attended in-person trainings where I'm at a table with a group of individuals. Could be during the workday or outside of work hours. I know myself have had to go to, different kinds as well, where sometimes, I get ready to come to work and I'm like, oh, we have a training today that's during the work hour, or, I have to stay after work, or I have to drive somewhere else, or go with someone somewhere else because I don't drive, but go with someone somewhere else after the work hour to do professional development. So there is no rule or policy necessarily in terms of professional development saying that it has to be during the work hours. There may be some type of policy where you work that says only, trainings can only be during work hours, but sometimes you attend things on the weekends or in the evenings. Professional development can be on a one-on-one basis where it's two people. You might have a trainer that comes in that works with you in your office or on the telephone, or you may be in a group setting, either through like this webinar or again out at a training with a group of coworkers or colleagues. Something we talked about earlier, it could be led by, rehab professionals, or it could be led by someone outside in the community. So I'm leading this one. I'm a rehab professional, have been for many, many years, and I'm talking about a topic related to rehab in terms of professional development. However, I have attended trainings not led by rehab professionals. So at the university, I wear, different roles as an educator, as a teacher and as a rehab professional. So I will often go to trainings about software that might be great to use in the classroom, and that is not led by someone from the field. And quite often I have to educate that individual on disability and accessibility and accommodations. So please know that sometimes you may attend professional development and it may not be by someone in our field, and they may not be as familiar with terminology in terms of disability or accommodations or accessibility. That doesn't mean that it's not professional development. It just means that it's being led by someone, as from the outside, not necessarily in the field. Okay. So there are different types that kind of go along with the characteristics. So different types of professional development. So, we mentioned earlier you could be participating in in-service training. I can recall when I first started working as a vocational rehabilitation counselor for the state of Texas, the one thing people kept saying was, don't worry, if you don't know it, they're going to train you. The first 2 years is nothing but training, which is professional development. And that was very true. I went to a week's worth of training, at one point. I would do a day here or there. That's that in-service training where you're at work or you're in a facility, for maybe a day or two, or in my case, a week. And I was fortunate because I worked in Austin. The training was in Austin. But that's where you actually go to work, but you don't necessarily work with your clients. You're just doing training, which, sometimes is kind of good because it gets you out doing something different, gets your mind thinking about other things. So sometimes that can be helpful to have those days where you're not necessarily focusing on clients, but you're focusing on getting that training that you need. Attending conferences is a great way to get professional development. And someone even mentioned to me that there are now conferences you can attend virtually. So I know that travel can be difficult for people. It costs a lot of money to travel. There is either it's a car, gas, mileage, or it's the plane fare, and then it's the hotel and the food. There are some conferences now that are focusing strictly on online attendance, and you check in online and you can watch the sessions virtually and still get your continuing education credit. And I think that's a great way to kind of help in terms of travel, which may be difficult for people. At the same time, I know that I like to go to things in person too, because then you get to talk to other professionals there and you can network and you can learn about what's happening in other places. You can also go up and talk, to the presenters and get great information from them. And I know some of us are very hands-on, need to be there in the moment. So attending conferences is a great way to get that professional development for you to share with other people kind of what's happening in your area, but then a way for you to learn from, other people in terms of what's going on in their area. Again, another way to do continuing education or to do professional development is to complete a degree or certification. I know people often think, professional development has to be, after you've left, getting other training or when you're at the job. But no, you're developing yourself professionally if you think about it in the sense of that. And so going back to school and getting a degree, whether it's a bachelor's degree in some type of rehabilitation services or a master's in rehabilitation counseling, is very valuable because you're getting those specialized training, as we talked about earlier, that training that focuses on disability, that specialized training. The same thing can be said for doing certificates, getting certified through classes. It's that specialized training again. It might be on job development, it could be on job coaching. The training could be on the Americans with Disabilities Act, on how to best accommodate people with disabilities. But it's again getting that specialized training so that you can be competent to go out and work with your clients. Joining professional organizations is a great way also to, get professional development. And you can join organizations that are specific to, the field of rehabilitation or specific to what you do in your profession. So I am in a rehab educators organization, so that's specific to rehabilitation, but also specific to education. I am also in an organization that focuses on education and rehabilitation for individuals with blindness, because that's an area of interest to me. So that's, again, specific to something that's of interest, to me in terms of what I like to research, what I like to teach students about. But I'm also in a National Association for Multicultural Rehab Concerns, because that is also of interest. Cultural competence is of interest to me. I have other colleagues, though, here at the university who may be in the rehab educators group with me, but then they may be in the psychological assessments group because they are interested in assessments. Some of you may be in APSE, for instance, and maybe in a rehab association. Whatever makes sense for you. That doesn't mean you have to go out and join all the organizations, because I will say we have so many that focus on disability that it gets overwhelming. Choose the ones that work best for you and what you provide in terms of your services. Also, joining these organizations can become very, very costly. As a professional, sometimes it could be, $300 to join an organization. I remember as a student, you'd pay maybe $15, $20, and I thought, oh, this is great. But once you become a professional, that goes up tremendously. So choose wisely in terms of organizations that you may want to join. What's the benefit in terms of professional development there is that you will get access to the conferences. So we talked earlier about attending conferences and how that's a great way to get professional development. Well, if you are a member of those organizations, the conference fee is usually cheaper or less expensive versus non-members. So I can recall I went to a conference a couple of years ago called the Teaching Professor, and it was about, obviously teaching at the college level. Because I'm a lecturer, I tend to focus more on the teaching component as opposed to the research part. And when I went to register for the conference, it was $800 because I was not a member. Now, thankfully, I had been, doing other trainings for UNTYs. I had been participating in other projects, so I had money in my travel funds to pay for that. But had I not had that, I would not be going. I'm not sure about the rest of you, but I don't necessarily have an extra $800 just hanging out, to attend conferences. Conferences are awesome, but $800 was just my registration. That did not include the travel to the conference or my hotel or food. So, just things to think about. As a member, though, I think the cost for a member to go to that conference was like $400 or $500, which again is still kind of pricey, but almost half of what I was paying as a non-member. So another reason to think about joining organizations is so you can get access to going to conferences and trainings, but also you can get access to reading journal articles and getting journals, in the mail. I know there's some great information about things that are happening out in the field that I get to read because I have access to journals. So another good way to, think about joining, organizations, but then it goes back to you get to meet other people in the field. And networking is a great way, to learn about, what are people doing, what should I be doing, and how can I best, help my clients. We talked about, reading professional publications. So that would be those journals that you might get from joining an organization or going online, because I know a lot of them now, once you register, they give you a login and password so that when you go online, you get access to all these great resources that you can use to help your clients or customers. So reading that material, though, again, professional development, because it's going back to you getting that specialized training to give you the knowledge and skills you need to work with your clients or customers. And here, establishing a mentoring relationship, here's one that people don't often think of when they think about professional development. What would having a mentoring relationship, how is that going to help me? I know I am a mentor for individuals, and I also have a mentor. So I want to talk about each of those components because they're kind of two different things. So when you are new in the field, or maybe you're still, a student or learning or getting certifications, it's great to go out and find someone who is a mentor in the field, who's actually out there, doing the job that you're interested in. And you're probably saying, well, okay, I guess. That person can talk to you about their experiences, things that have worked really well for them as a professional, and not just, tips for working with clients or customers, but also things that may help them as a professional, maybe time management, talking to potential employers, how do I go out and network and meet other people? How do I find out about the latest, trainings or interventions to use with clients or customers? So it's good to have a mentor for that. But then your mentor can also provide you with some, great tips and suggestions for providing services to clients and consumers that perhaps they have used in the past and that have worked, really well for them. So good to have a mentor. What's also good though about mentoring, because I am a mentor for someone, is I get to share my experiences with individuals who may be new to the field or new to teaching at the university, and I get to learn from them. What are new individuals needing when they come into the field? What's important to a new teacher? Uh, I often, from my mentee that I actually have at UNT, I learn from her very frequently because I might be missing some new technology that's come out, and because she's new to the field, she knows about newer things. I graduated with my doctorate degree almost 10 years ago, which is hard for me to believe, frankly. I should just be honest, because I don't feel like I'm that old, but it'll be 10 years in May. Well, since that time, all kinds of things have happened in terms of, rehabilitation and teaching. And though I stay up to date as best I can, for someone who's newly graduating, coming out into the field, they may know something that I just didn't learn as a student, or that might be beneficial to me. And also to be a mentor, I have to keep track of what's happening so that I can pass that knowledge on to my mentee. So it again gets you to, ensuring that you're checking in and you're reading and you're staying up to date on what's out there in terms of trainings. So these are all, kind of different types and great ways to participate in professional development. Crystal, I'm just going on and on and on, and I don't know if anyone has any questions or comments.
We do have some comments. One person said that they love conference attending as it opens the door to meeting other professionals and collaborating with others, which is very true. We often find that, especially here at UNT, when our staff goes to different conferences, we meet up with people we haven't seen in a while, and we get to talking, and we start finding out that, oh, well, we have this in common, so let's partner up and find a way to address this issue. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad you made that comment, because I talked about, networking and meeting people and, excuse me, bouncing ideas. Hello, collaboration. Yeah, and Crystal is she's very true on that, because I have actually gone with her and Martha Garber to conferences, and the next thing I know, we're all on a project with somebody else doing something. So yes,
like every
definitely,
time.
definitely.
We had another comment too about many people working in the field of rehabilitation and job coaching are often not involved in conference attendance. We have to change this, and you were correct about the cost of joining and attending.
Oh my God, I'm telling you, you would think at some point we could figure out a nice economical way for people to go to conferences, but it's difficult. And that's why I think I really like seeing that now we have things that are virtual, but you don't have to always go to a national conference. There are things right here in your back door that I know we have stuff all the time that it's in Denton, so it's not far for us to go. Crystal will send emails about the North Texas Area Rehab Association that's just right around here, and they provide professional development. So that's something that's convenient and easy, for us to attend. It doesn't always have to be a national conference. I go to state things, I go to local stuff. I try to mix it up because, again, it can become very, very costly. I should also mention, though, on the other side, I have been a conference co-chair for a national conference twice. And those hotels, are not cheap. You have to pay for every little thing. And so I see why conferences can become costly. And not that this is a webinar on how to cut costs at a conference, but I've often had to share a room with somebody if I need to cut costs. It's not a problem for me if it's somebody I like, clearly, not like a big snore or anything. But I will share, with my colleagues if I need to cut down on the cost. So that's something to think about. Or even thinking of going somewhere where someone that lives there, so you can maybe stay with them to cut off, or staying at a different hotel. I've also done that because sometimes the conference hotel can be quite pricey in comparison to one that's like 2 blocks down the street. So just some different things. But yes, conference attendance, definitely. Job coaches, you guys should definitely get out and go to that. You're providing great direct services to people with disabilities. And wouldn't it be great if you could meet other rehab professionals and partner with them and collaborate or share ideas? Definitely. Good comment.
And we had another comment that said being a part of a professional organization is just really important, and it truly is. Like you've been saying, it's opportunities for networking, it's opportunities to learn new things about what's going on in the field. So yes, good comment there too.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I can't express the importance of that. You know, I was very fortunate that as soon as I was a student, I originally started out in speech pathology. I wasn't a rehab person, so shout out to anybody that didn't start out in rehab. I'm sure it's pretty much everybody on here. And even then, when I was a speech pathology student, I was in the student organization. When I became a rehab student, I joined the rehab organizations. That was something that was instilled from my mentor to me, as well as from my teachers to me. And I had mentors who were not my teachers, so you don't have to choose if you're in some type of education program or you're getting a certificate. Your mentor does not have to be the person that's providing the training. You could go out and seek out other people. And my mentor, who was not involved in my direct education, definitely told me about some great organizations I should join. And so that has been instilled as something that I, continue to do. I can't, again, emphasize how important it is for people to join professional organizations. Even if you can't go to the conference, at least get the publications, see what they have locally, because a lot of times these national organizations will have local chapters that have local trainings that you can attend that are way more economical than having to go to the national conference. Anything else, Crystal, before we move on?
Not at this time.
Thank you. So we've kind of talked a lot about these in terms of professional development, but I wanted to give you just some examples in case you forget any of this and you're like, what might be an example. So the UNT-WISE webinars, love them. I've attended them. I've given them. UNT-WISE is great. This is a great way for people to get professional development. And again, you can be at your house in your jammies. I'm not going to lie, I have done a couple of webinars at my house in my pajamas. It's great. It doesn't require you to have to, be somewhere. I'm often grateful that no one can see me sometimes when I'm on the webinar because I am at home. Today I am in my office and I'm actually professionally dressed, but sometimes I'm at my house hanging out with the baby and the dog and doing a training. So this is a great way to get access. And I also know that you can log back into the WISE webinars on demand. Is that correct, Crystal?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. And so you can log in and get access to the training materials whenever it's convenient for you. So maybe you don't have time during the workday, so you have to do it in the evening or the weekends. UNT-WISE is a great way to get those professional trainings. And I'm not just saying that because I'm doing the training. No one has asked me to promote UNT-WISE. Let me be very clear. I actually believe it's a great way to get professional development. The APSE, Employment First Training, saw that online. They have all kinds of different things that you can get for Employment First Training. And they actually have it divided for professionals, for different types of professionals. It's a great way to get some of that Employment First Training. I saw that online as well. I mentioned earlier that I belong to the National Association of Multicultural Rehab Concerns. Attending their conference is a great way to get professional development and training. And NAMRIC, I will say, is not just educators, it's not just rehab counselors. We have individuals who are people with disabilities who attend that because they're interested in the multicultural component, because it's multicultural rehab concerns, not counseling. So we see people who work in private rehab, people who might be in vocational rehab. We have providers who may be in supported employment who attend the training. It's anyone who has a vested interest in multiculturalism as well as rehabilitation and people with disabilities. So it's a great way to attend a conference. Just personal, this is a shout out to NAMRIC. They are having their next conference in Las Vegas. So if you're interested in going to Las Vegas or you live near there, it's a great conference to attend. Students go, providers, professionals, educators, you name it. It's a great mix. The certificate in, job development or placement. I know that many places actually provide these certificates. I know UNT Wise is a provider of certificates, but I actually saw when I typed this in, there are many different organizations that provide certificates in job placement and job development. I also noticed that when I typed in job coach, it wasn't specific to rehabilitation anymore. Job coaching looked like it was wide open in terms of career coaching, where people are working with individuals with and without disability. So there are definitely lots of certificates out there in job development and placement, many of which are specific to disability, which we all are familiar with, but some that are not necessarily focused on disability. And then reading a journal, so I put the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is a good journal to read. They have lots of articles about service provision for people with disabilities, as well as education and different pieces. Now, I'm fortunate at the university here, we have access, to getting articles through the library, which is a great way. If you don't, if you're a student or you're in a certificate program, check with either your university library or your local library. They may have some of these journals that you can, either download for free or check out for free, which is a great way to get professional development. People do not access their libraries enough. I love the library. I'm a library card holder for my local library. So again, it's a great way to still get access to information. Now, why would you want to participate in professional development? We've gone on about defining it and talking about all the types and examples, but why would you even want to participate in that? Again, you want to acquire up-to-date knowledge. There are things that we have done in rehabilitation in terms of providing services that are out of date, that we no longer do. So, for instance, many of you are in supported employment. Well, what was before supported employment? Sheltered workshops, something that I know still exists, but not necessarily what we consider to be a current way to get employment for individuals with disabilities. We focus more on that supported employment. Well, now that means that people need to acquire, that knowledge about supported employment and learning, what's up to date, what's new in terms of supported employment, and why we don't necessarily focus on sheltered workshops anymore. And then to provide high quality services to your clients. I mean, wouldn't you, if you were a client, wouldn't you want high quality services? When I think about practicing in the field or working with students, I often say, what would I want? And I tell the students, think about this. What would you want if you were a client, if you were on the other side? And I know that one of those things would be we would want high quality services. So we as professionals should be providing those same types of services. And then you want to learn the latest interventions for service delivery. I know that every time I attend a conference, I learned something new that I did not know that was out there, whether it's something that focuses on teaching students or it's something that's specific to service delivery for rehabilitation. Now, I may not be providing direct care services anymore to clients or customers with disabilities, but I'm teaching people to go out and provide those services, so I need to know those. But for those of you who are providing those direct services, it's important, to know what's new out there. Is there something new with technology? Is there this new intervention that works well? And specifically, we know that there's certain services that work well with certain populations. So what's new out there for autism spectrum disorder? What's new out there in terms of blindness? Thinking about the new things that are out there so that you can be a step ahead. This is also great for those of you who are entrepreneurs or are self-employed, because then you can say, well, we do the latest and up to date, and we're using things that have been shown to be effective but are new. I know that when I'm looking for things for myself or for my son, I'm looking for who is using the latest and most up to date. I'm not looking for that person that's using something that is out of date. So, things to think about. And then also to adhere to ethical practices, which is kind of where we're going to go next, but it's very important that we think of professional development and ethics because the two do go hand in hand. Crystal, before we move on to ethics, are there any more questions or comments?
No, just well, no questions, but just one comment about acquiring up-to-date knowledge, that yes, it is very important that we're not just attending trainings that we've attended over and over again, but that we're branching out and learning new things.
I could not agree more with whoever has said that. I know I do it because we all fall into a rut and we're like, oh, I like this group or I like this art. So we go to the same conferences over and over, and we may not branch out. So from myself, a few years ago, I started branching out and going to something I'd never gone to before. So I went to a conference once on higher education and students with disabilities. Something I'd never been to. Got some great information there. And then the next go around, I was like, well, I'm gonna go to this teaching conference. So I went to a conference on teaching, something I'd never been to again, met some great people. And so now as I'm thinking about this upcoming year, I'm like, what's something different I can go to that's, not the run-of-the-mill, the same, rehab conference over and over. So stepping out and going to other things that are related to what you do, where you can get some new, up-to-date information. Great comment, whoever provided that.
That's the only comment we had.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about ethics. Let's talk a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit about ethics, and don't worry, we're going to, do a refresher on ethics the next time. So this is not just an ethics training, but it's important to think about ethics when we think about professional development. So why are ethics important? It defines a profession for its stakeholders. So we have ethics in rehabilitation, doctors have ethics, lawyers have ethics, education has ethics. That kind of defines, who we are as a profession. Again, provides standards for, decision making and for practice. So I, as a rehab counselor, cannot obviously prescribe medicine, but a doctor can, and that's based on their, ethical principles and code. And then it's, an important component of establishing a profession. So in rehabilitation counseling, we focus on disability. In, let's say, other forms of counseling, they may not focus on disability. And that's something that makes us distinct, that we as rehab counselors have that disability emphasis, whereas other counseling groups may not have that emphasis on disability. So that kind of defines us in terms of who we are. So I'm going to talk about 3 different ethical guidelines, one for human services, and then I'm going to talk about APSES, and then I'm going to talk about the Certified Rehab Counseling ethical principles. Oh, but before I forgot, I was talk about stakeholders. So who are going to be the stakeholders? Who are going to, benefit from you having great ethical standards? Your consumers, your customers, your clients, whatever it is that you call the individuals you work with. If you're practicing good ethics, they're going to be a stakeholder and are going to benefit from that. Other professionals are going to benefit from, if you're a good colleague and a good professional, then they are invested in ethics as well. Your peers, people who may not necessarily be, professionals in the field, but they may work with you. You might have an administrator that works with you. They're going to benefit from ethics. And then the public, making sure that we're providing good services out there in the public. That is very important in terms of ethics. So and you'll learn as we go through these professional guidelines for human services, APSE, and then CRC, that there are some commonalities among all 3 of these, even though they are a little bit different. So the first one in terms of human services is this responsibility to your clients. That's that whole notion that you're going to do well by your clients, you're not going to harm them, you're going to provide the services you say, and you're going to do, good to your clients. Oops. Responsibility to the community and society. So again, if you say that you have a business where you're working with individuals with disabilities, that when you go out in the community and you're working with said individuals, you're going to be respectful of those who are not necessarily working with you. So if you're out with a client, let's say at Walgreens, for instance, and you're doing some job coaching, that you're going to be respectful to those who are also in the Walgreens who are not necessarily participating in the job coaching. Then your responsibility to colleagues. You need to treat your colleagues with respect and be honest. And the same thing, if you notice that a colleague needs help, that you're going to go out and assist, that individual to make sure they're providing good services. And then to the profession. Here's where we start to think about professional development as well. You have a responsibility to the profession. That means that if you have been trained to be a job developer, a job coach, a rehab counselor, you need to continue on learning about that job so that you can do really well. So there's that responsibility that you have to the profession that says you're going to go out and continue to educate yourself. And then responsibility to employers, whether it is the people who actually employ you as a human service professional, as well as the potential employers that you're going to go out and meet. We have a responsibility to be, ethical in terms of working with those individuals. And then to yourself, you have a responsibility to yourself that you're going to take care of you. And make sure that you are healthy and in good spirits so that you can provide these services. But one of these ways in terms of professional development is if you're not prepared, how are you going to help someone else? So if I know that I have to go and teach a class, I can't just walk in the room not looking at the topic, not reading myself, and not being prepared. So not only am I being responsible in terms of the students, but I'm being responsible to myself so that I'm not anxious. Because I can tell you on the days when I go in the room and I've had a stressful day and I haven't had a chance to read as much as I like before I go in, I'm real anxious and I'm worried. However, if I take that time to, sit down and read and get prepared, I have, taken care of making sure I know what the students need to know. And then I am calm. So I'm responsible now to the students as well as to myself. Now the APSE human principles. So we talk about, individuality, where we focus on an individual's needs, that lack of grouping. Well, I'm sure that you can definitely get some great professional development that helps you to think about how can I best help an individual holistically and not just focus on a group. Quite frequently in the past with rehabilitation, we'd say, oh, these interventions are great for all people with disabilities. Well, now we know that's not the case. There are certain interventions and certain job skills that work better, or I should say certain skills for people with disabilities that work better with specific disability groups. So focus on an individual instead of a group is a great way to practice ethical principles. Choice, allowing your client to have choice and to be able to, pick things that may be beneficial for him or her or they. Quite frequently we thought, oh, I'm the professional, I know better, I should tell you what to do. Well, now we know through professional development, through trainings, that choice and letting an individual have their own choice is a better way to go. And then respect, having that active participation. I can't say enough about respect. That should just be like the #1 theme of this whole thing, is that if you have respect for your client, they will have respect for you, and that will make that relationship work so much better. And again, it's learning. I've learned that, that through my own, professional development and my own training, that if a client does not want to participate in something, I can't say, well, you must do it, or I can't talk to a client like a child. Even when I work with students, I have to remind myself these are, people I work with are adults, they're not children, so that I have to treat them with some type of respect that helps our relationship go much better. And then looking at a client's competencies, their gifts and talents and things that they bring to the table. It's a great way to help a client in terms of, finding employment and keeping employment. And again, how do you know what someone's gifts and talents are? How would I even know how to ask a person that? That might be through some type of professional training. And then social inclusion. We talked earlier about, we used to believe that sheltered workshops were the way to go. Now we talk about supported employment. Well, that's social inclusion. Having people with and without disabilities working together. But we would not have known that had it not been the research and providing trainings, to people to get that going. We would still be dependent on that sheltered workshop model. And then, community settings where we try to minimize, restrictions for individuals. Again, that's something that came out of continuing to do research and to find out how can we help individuals have, least amount of restrictions, as opposed to putting restrictions on individuals and making them stay in, environments where it's segregated with just people with disabilities. Now, I see people with disabilities all over participating in activities. I know for me, it's a joy to be at a university teaching. I'm sure for many students, I'm their first, instructor who is blind or visually impaired. But I'm able to do that because I have minimal restrictions with my job. And then, when we look at employment, having options and decisions for your clients, not just saying, well, everyone, you either go in this job or you don't have a choice. Again, providing these different options for an individual and allowing them to participate in the decision-making process. And how would you learn that? Perhaps going through some types of professional development training so that a client, excuse me, can be a part of the decision-making process. I'm going to clear my throat really quick, Crystal, if you will let me know if we have any questions or comments.
Sure, we do have a comment. This person said it's important to stay on the good side of ethics. In other words, do the right things for our clients all the time. Forget the money. It's about doing the right thing.
And let me just say, that is a great comment because I know the money is very important. However, if you are unethical, you could lose the clients and you could lose whatever certification you have. So there goes the money that you were trying to keep anyway. But doing good to clients, is a great thing in terms of being ethical and, and providing high quality services. So great comment. So here are some further principles in terms of ethics related and to practice from APSE. So looking at career planning, providing choices, something that we often didn't think of in terms of rehabilitation. I even know when I was a counselor, this was over 10 years ago, we talked about career planning, but it's so different the way we talk about career planning now and helping people with disabilities. It was still focused on, oh, if you have this disability, I'm not really sure you can do this career. Now it's open. The doors are open for people with disabilities to think about other options. Well, you may not be able to have a career as a pilot, but you still may be able to have a career in aviation doing something else. So that notion of career planning is something that has come a long way. But now I know this because of trainings and professional development. Job development, looking at those professional, interactions for people. Again, getting good training on, how can you provide, job development and going out there, to help people get those connections. And then looking at job, acquisition and matching, skills and preferences. Again, it's not necessarily looking at a person's disability or abilities, but looking at what are they interested in, what can they do. And it may not be their, job that they've always wanted since they were 6 years old, but it might be something that is closely related that still uses their skills and is of still interest to them. And then looking at work supports and looking at holistic support networks. Again, this is where we allowed people to stop, having to go into sheltered workshops and to go more into integrated, settings where people were getting, natural supports at the job. The term natural supports also came out of research, came out of professional development. That's how we learn about these terms that you all use every day, is through some type of professional training or development. And then also, now we've gotten you a job. Now, how can we help our clients advance? That was the thing I think of when I was working as a rehab counselor. It was so important to get people jobs that we didn't focus on so much. Well, what happens after they've gotten the job? Can they not, advance in their career? And I think that's something that we're, seeing more in terms of the trends of employment is great. Let's get people with disabilities jobs. Now, once we've done that, let's help them, move up the career ladder. And then, staff training, what do people at the job, so if you're providing job development and job coaching, what trainings can you provide to a potential employer so they can best support your clients? Again, it goes back to now you're providing the professional development, which is great as well. So you become a part of that overall professional development process. So now I'm going to briefly talk about the CRC principles. And as I mentioned, don't worry, we're going to go back through this next time and talk about high quality services and best practices. So don't panic if you're like, oh my gosh, it's going super fast. So autonomy, that, rule, to be independent, self-rule, make your own decisions. Well, how do I know how to practice that? Yeah, I've learned some things through professional development where I am able to help my clients make their own decisions. Beneficence, do good to others. It goes back to that whole respect thing. You want to do good to others, to have that good respect for your clients and making sure they're getting, what they need. Non-maleficence, do no harm. You don't want to harm your clients. I remember when I was a student and we went through these principles and that one came up, the do no harm, and I was like, oh my God, I'm going to harm somebody. How am I going to know if I'm hurting somebody? What am I? And I immediately started to panic. But as I gained more education and as I started working with clients, I start to, understand this notion of do no harm. And okay, is this really going to harm somebody? Is it not? And how can I, help an individual? Fidelity, be faithful. If you say you're going to do something for a client, do it. That goes back to what the individual who made the comment earlier was like, we get so focused on perhaps, making money, which is great, that we forget, that if we tell a client we're going to do something, we should be faithful to that. Justice, be fair. If you, do one thing for a consumer or a customer or a client, you may have to do that for another, client or customer. And the same thing, you may have to do that for a potential employer as well. And then veracity, be honest. There are going to be times when you're going to have to tell your client, that something is not going to work out in his or her favor and why that, may be. Again, ethics doesn't mean that you do everything that caters, to your client. You're working in the scope of your profession, of yourself, and of potential employers. These are just some, guidelines to help you to provide, good services, to your client. And the thing that all three have in common is that they focus on this notion of respect and being fair and not doing harm, to your clients or customers. So even though these three guidelines came from different organizations, they still have that commonality in providing, good services to clients. So Crystal, as we, start to wrap this up, is there any more comments or questions before I say anything else?
We had a comment on your last slide that said, yes, other options typically do not offer rehab as an option. But I'm not 100% sure what thing that went with.
And I don't know what that means. If the person could clarify, that would be great. Or if we could clarify, then I could talk about on the next one, that would be great as well. Because I kind of understand what you're saying, but I don't want to assume. And being ethically, I don't want to assume that I understand what the person is saying. But again, I just can't emphasize the need for people to get involved in professional trainings and development, and how if you don't, you could be doing harm to your clients because you're providing out-of-date services. So that's my takeaway.
Doesn't look like we have any other questions, just several comments saying that they really enjoyed this presentation. This is great information. Definitely need to start attending more conferences.
I get it. I'm realistic. I get it. Not everybody has this pocket of money that we're just, storing up to go to conferences, but they're super beneficial. If you could even try and do a local conference, that definitely would be helpful for you.
Mhm. Yeah, and like you were saying earlier, I think a lot of times we kind of get in our bubble and we don't really realize that there are a lot of training options around us. Like you were saying, we have some in Denton, there's some in Dallas, I'm sure in El Paso there's probably some, but we kind of just get in the habit of doing the same routine over and over every day that we kind of forget about those other little things we could be doing. So.
Exactly. Stepping outside your bubble is a great way to do that.
Yeah, yeah. And the time, several people are saying, it's the time, it's not having enough time to do everything that we really want to do to improve our own skills.
Exactly. And I think that's why it's great that we have things that are online. So if you don't have a lot of time, maybe you try to attend one conference a year. So that's your time when you're away from, working with clients. But then you do your other things virtually when you have the time to sit down and read an article or sit down and attend a training, that you kind of mix it up. So that's a great comment as well. I know that people's time is very precious in terms of time management.
And that's all of the questions and comments we have for today.
Okay. Well, while on the subject of
So,
time, I don't want to go over.
right, we're right on time. We're good today.
Oh, awesome. Yay. Well,
All right.
thank you,
Well,
everybody. I certainly appreciate you attending and listening to me, and I look forward to talking to you guys next week. And I'll turn it over to you, Crystal.
thank you, Brady. We really appreciate you being with us today and taking time out of your busy schedule to meet with us. The second part of this presentation is next Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time. So if you're not in the Central Standard Time zone, that's when it's going to be. You will receive an email with a link to that session. Additionally, you'll receive an email with an evaluation link for the two-part series. Please complete the survey as your feedback provides us vital information in improving our webinar listings. At the end of the next session, we will also be sure to upload your certificate of attendance to your user portal. And if you need CRC credit, be sure to request that at the end of the next session. Thank you for your attendance today, and we hope you have a great day, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.